Hey, what's up? It's Jim, and today I'm going to talk about the film Frisco Jenny from 1932. And this continues my quest to review as much of William Wellman's filmography in the year of 2013 as I possibly can, and this is yet another installment. Jenny, who is played by Ruth Catterton, grows up working at her father's brothel, and she finds herself pregnant by the piano player who she means to marry until the 1906 San Francisco earthquake happens and destroys the saloon and brothel and kills both her father and her fiance in that earthquake, and she is distraught and has her baby and tries to work for the Salvation Army for a little bit, but then turns into San Francisco's biggest madam, does basically various parties for the very wealthy until one of those guys, Steve Dutton, played by Louis Calleran, and he is bedding in the back room when he's supposed to come out and be the guest of honor at his party, ends up getting in a fight with the guy because he has phony dice to basically scam him out of tons of money, and they get in a fight and he shoots a guy in a pretty cool sequence where Wellman does this typical thing where he hides the violence. You know, the violence is behind screen. You almost think the lawyer is the one who killed him. The guy who did the fake betting got away. And anyway, I don't want to, I'm basically ruining the whole sequence, but I thought his staging was incredible. Really good, like, pre-code staging where he made it far more of an interesting scene than basically if he just shot a guy and walked away. That would be very dull, but he made it a little more enticing, a lot more interesting. Since Jenny is in the back room trying to get him out, she tries to cover it up, but then they find the dead body and she kind of takes the rap for it, but he gets her off, and then her son from the piano player is then going to be taken away by child services. So they move her son to these rich, wealthy, older lawyers so that nothing happens, and she means to take him back after a while and go straight, and she's like running a brothel and things, but she's like, now I'm going to go straight. But he doesn't want to go with her and leave the country and go to Europe. He wants to stay with his parents, and he's really a little kid, so he thinks his parents are this older couple, and she decides, you know what, forget it, and she goes back to a life of crime. And then years later, that little boy grows up to be the district attorney, and she is tried for murder, and he is prosecuting her, his own mother, although he doesn't really know that. It's 1932, it's pre-code. It doesn't feel very pre-code. I mean, they don't acknowledge that it's a brothel, but it is fairly obvious it is. But the way Jenny, played by Ruth Catterton, the way her character is so mournful. You look at Tom Power in Public Enemy, and even though you see, you know, crime is bad through some of it, it still looks like a lot of fun. He still, like, really likes his life of crime. And Ruth Catterton's character of Jenny is always mournful, like all these horrible circumstances had led to her living this life of crime and becoming like a big madam and then becoming a bootlegger later and always being one of the biggest people in organized crime in San Francisco. She just became that because what else was she going to do? And anytime she tried to get out, she'd have to go back in because she was too poor, because her son didn't want her. This was like the life that she could always go to. It never felt like she really liked that. It's an interesting way to meld it with kind of the woman's picture, and this has a lot of similarities to So Big, but it's way darker than So Big in that she's a mother who gave up a lot for her son, and her son became kind of the opposite of what she is. He's very much the good and she is the bad, but she doesn't like being bad. She's like, I had to do this is what I had to do, this is my lot in life. Her character's a little heavy-handed with it. You never really see her smile except at the beginning, pre-earthquake. I don't really like this film as much as the two with Stanwyck that he did before and after this, although in some filmographies it says that this was done between So Big and Purchase Price, and others it doesn't. But apparently Ruth Catterton was in a film with a similar plot called Madam X, but in the other one, the prosecuting lawyer knew he was her son. In this, he doesn't know. Wellman's direction in this, it's very much like his pre-code direction. It's very simple. He uses the camera really well in this film. I think it's one of his best shot movies of this period, definitely. A lot of the great tracking shots in this movie, like very long tracking shots that almost like look like something Scorsese watched before he did Goodfellas. I like the tracking shots because it gives you a sense of one of the biggest things in film is geography and understanding where you are, and a lot of the tracking shots serve that purpose, but they're also really gorgeous. How he uses the camera in the court scene, does this thing where the camera moves, it shows one person and then it moves and it cuts. So you have this jerky motion, and there's a certain point I think it's just moving from one person to the other, but then it's cutting. But since it's so seamless, it's like you see a row of people, and I think it's a row of people, but then it cuts to Ruth Catterton, who you know isn't with the audience of the trial. She's separated from all them, but the way they cut it together, it looks like everyone's like in a line. You show someone, the camera moves, and it like cuts on that movement to the next person. It has this jerky movement to it. And while this is all going on, her son is giving a speech to the jury so that, you know, she won't go to jail and be sentenced to death. And showing all these people like that made the sequence so much more alive. It's kind of a sequence that in a lot of movies, cinematography wise, is kind of boring, and he made it really interesting and kind of experimental. He was forced to do this film by Darryl F. Zanuck. He didn't want to do this film. One of the things I like about watching directors who worked in Hollywood in the early days of Hollywood in the 30s and the 40s is when these directors were assigned certain pictures, they try to have fun with it. They mess around with certain things. They get to be a little more experimental than certainly I think you are today with big studio films, or even any kind of studio film, because you know you'd move on to the next one because they made so many films at that time. Both him and the star Ruth Catterton didn't want to work together. She was tough on her directors and he's always tough on his stars, and they actually like tried to work with each other as little as possible at the beginning, but then ended up becoming good friends. Ruth Catterton is still a good actress, and maybe it's just the role. I'm going to see her again in Lily Turner. I think it's just the nature of the role kind of brought it down. I thought she still did a good job, and you definitely feel for her. This is kind of a very dark movie, and it is very much a woman's picture. It's probably the least fun one I've seen. It says a lot about Wellman as a director that he can, I think if he hadn't used the camera so much in this film, and even, he does the thing he does in Public Enemy, not to the extreme as Public Enemy, where he basically one shot, but he's moving the camera in and out. Not a tracking shot, this is a different shot where he's moving the camera and zooming in and zooming out, and he really does a lot with the camera, so it's just, you're not bored, and you don't realize it. It's like invisible, but it does so much for a lot of scenes, and it brings them out so much. And that's one of the things I really like about Wellman as a director is like I could feel like he couldn't sit still or something. He's like, no, I don't want to just like have the camera set up and then go have lunch. I want to really work hard. And I think that's one of the things that also comes out in this film is he always likes characters, men or women, who work hard, who work for a living, who have that working class ideal. My work is bringing me down. This is what I have to do to survive. And that really works really well in Frisco Jenny. It's not a great Wellman, it's not a classic Wellman, but I think if you like Pre-Code, it's an interesting watch. It's still a good movie, it's just not one of my favorite Wellmans I've seen through doing this Wellman series. Also, if you look really quick, when Jenny sets up the other district attorney so her son can win, when the reporters are talking in the phone booth, you can actually spot William Wellman. I saw him in there. I was like, oh man, there he is. So if you have seen Frisco Jenny and you would like to talk about it, then comment below in the comments and subscribe if you would like to. So the next William Wellman review will be Lily Turner, and to kind of get more of these Wellman reviews done, it will be tomorrow. So tomorrow I will be releasing my review of Lily Turner, and then there will be a week off because I'm doing reviews for Superman and various other Superman films. And then tomorrow, which is Wednesday, I will be reviewing another Ruth Catterton or Chatterton, I'm not sure which, film with William Wellman, and that is Lily Turner, and I hope to see you then.